Welcome to Purposely Curious. I'm Mary, your host. On this inaugural episode, I sit down with my friend Leone D'Antonio to discuss a scary topic which I've always been curious about. Do you believe in ghosts? Are you afraid of things that go bump in the night? Join me as we embark on this fun episode where we discuss horror culture and its popularity in our present-day society. Turn off the lights and get cozy as this episode starts now. Leone D'Antonio.
Correct.
Did I butcher it?
No. Thank you so much for having me. It's such a pleasure to be here.
Thank you for being my first guest.
Ah, wow. I'm honored. This is great. Seriously.
Thank you very much. And to start, I wanted us to have a drink together as a celebration for my first podcast.
Yes.
So we have the Strands Brewing Company, their Wake Up Stout Ale.
Oh, nice.
What do you think?
I'm intrigued.
Are you down to drink some?
Yes.
Yes.
Wake up juice.
Wake up juice.
All right. So what do we got here?
So I think it's 6%, 6.4%.
Wow,
So
okay, fancy.
I'm going to go ahead and open.
Let's see what happens.
Ooh.
Oh, yeah.
And we're going to pour.
Yes. All right. Let's see. Make sure I don't spill this. You got a fancy pour.
I do. And it fits perfectly. Now, actually, listening to that, have you heard of the YouTube videos where people are literally like whispering?
Oh, those ASMR videos?
I think, and then, or they're just eating.
Or ripping tape off or
Yes.
scratching the boards.
With millions of views.
Yeah.
So I feel like us pouring that probably
Contributed to it.
Yeah. Someone out there is getting off on it right now.
Dude, I'm getting off on it right here. It's amazing. It's like that people find either it drives them crazy or they're intrigued, right? They're like, oh, this is so calming. Listen to this. Listen to the whisper, you know? And I'm like, it does nothing for me. I just think that, well, it's interesting, but.
But isn't that what's the amazing thing of our brains is
Yes.
that none of our brains are wired the same.
Right.
And they, all of us are going to have certain things that we like
Right.
that the other person might be like, what the fuck?
That is
right?
true. That is amazing.
Well, let's cheer
Yes.
to
Pick up my
our
glass.
first
Here we go.
episode.
Here we go. Cheers.
Ooh, cheers.
Yes.
Well, I wanted to talk to you about your podcast, The Boo Crew.
Oh, okay, yeah.
You guys started it about a year ago. Is that correct?
2 years ago.
2 years
Yeah.
ago. Ah.
We just, on Thanksgiving, we just passed our 2-year anniversary.
Oh, congratulations.
Thank you.
Now, how did this all come about?
It came about with a group of friends, about 16 of us. You can imagine 16 friends going to the movies, right?
Mm-hmm.
And we would watch anything, right? It usually horror movies, but sometimes it was like some random blockbuster Marvel movie, something, right? And the last movie we saw together as a big group was Suicide Squad. And after the movie, we would spend more time talking about the movie than the movie was. So the movie was 2 hours. We'd be outside for like 2.5 hours after the movie talking about the movie. And then we're talking about this and we're like, why don't we just do a show where we do this? We talk about the movie, right? Because we had so much fun. Because some of our friends were filmmakers, some of them were in rock bands, some of us came from radio. So we all had different perspectives, and some of our friends are like just big in pop culture, the Kylie Jenner followers,
Mm-hmm.
and stuff, So we all had a different perspective as to why they liked the movie, why they hated it, whatever. But all indeed a very fun conversation. So we said, hey, why don't we just do a podcast, And then more specifically, why don't we do a horror podcast where we talk about the horror movies, So that's where that idea came from. And sure enough, we just kind of progressed and it just became a show.
And it seems that you guys are getting bigger and bigger with a bigger following.
Yes.
So my question to you is like, why do you think people are fascinated by horror, the horror genre and subject?
I think part of it is for the same reason that I am fascinated with it. I think it's escapism, because people who don't like it or, they usually say, God, you guys are weird. What? I'm like, no. We know it's fake. But we like to be scared. We like to think that we're in danger, right? But it's fake. It's fake and it's not real. Although some of these horror movies are based on true stories that kind of did happen, and that stuff is scary,
Mm-hmm.
But for me, and I think for a lot of people, it's escapism, because the world is crazy, and then everybody has their thing, right? Some people like to jump on a plane and go to a different country and escape and go to Bali for 2 months, and some people like to go play golf, whatever. And then the horror community, they like to watch these movies because we're frightened, and then we come back to reality and we're like, hey, you know what? We just saw a 2-hour movie in the theater that we paid for and enjoyed being scared, and now we go back to our jobs the next day.
Mm-hmm.
It's like escapism to just have fun, kind of like the blow off steam,
Right. Now, I know that I can't see horror movies.
Why not?
Because I get scared easily.
What is the scariest thing you've ever seen?
They've all been very scary, but the last one that I saw was, what's it? With Ryan Reynolds.
Ryan Reynolds. Oh, Amityville Horror.
Yes.
Okay.
And that was because I always kind of cover my eyes, but the biggest thing was that I yelled in the movie theater.
Oh my God, really?
Like literally yelled, and everyone laughed at me. And I said, "That's it. I'm no longer."
Do you want to come with me to see horror movies?
No.
I think you'd be a lot of fun.
No.
Yeah,
No.
Dude, the people that scream and yell are the best because they're into it. It's getting under their skin.
Oh yeah. But ever since then, and again, not only did I yell, but the fact that people laughed, I was like, yeah, I'm never
But
again.
they were laughing at you though.
Yeah.
They were laughing at, because here's the thing. In a good horror movie, you know what people do is they giggle, they laugh. Right before the scare happens, the tension, the music. There are people like yeah, oh, that was stupid. But you know why they do that? Because they don't want to show you that, hey, I'm scared. And that's me protecting myself by saying, oh, that's not scary, but they're scared.
Mm-hmm.
So I kind of I love that. I love hearing that. It's silly, but it's fun.
Well, speaking of that movie, didn't you guys have some of the current tenants? Was it for that house?
Oh, Amityville. No.
Was it another house?
Not that far. Okay, so the Amityville house is in Long Island, New York,
Mm-hmm.
and it was recently sold. Actually, again, it seems like every 3 or 4 years it's sold to a new owner, and it kind of begs the question: is the place still haunted?
Mm-hmm.
But no. One of our recent guests were Corey and Jen, the owners of the Conjuring House.
Conjuring.
Yes, the Conjuring House, which is far more terrifying than Amityville, far more, and that's in Rhode Island, by the way. And that haunting, which took place, I believe, in the early 70s, was excuse me, pretty terrifying, because it was a Perrin family, the husband and wife, Mr. and Mrs. Perrin, and the 5 daughters. And that haunting went on for like over a year, or so. And they made the movie called The Conjuring 2. And next summer will be Conjuring 3,
At the same house?
No, Conjuring 1 is based in that house, at that farmhouse. But the story is told through the perspective of Ed and Lorraine Warren, who are the investigators of that case. So what they did with those movies is those movies are based on their case files. So it's interesting because you're getting it from their perspective as to the events of what happened.
Mm-hmm. So you had them on one of your episodes.
Yes.
On the podcast.
Yes.
And do they see things, hear things?
Oh, yeah. Oh,
yeah.
Yeah, they just moved there, I would say now it's going on a few months now.
Mm-hmm.
And their husband and wife, youngish couple, they're like in their 30s, I think. He's like a former military guy, like he was in the Marines. And I don't know exactly what his wife does, but she gets a little freaked out about. But yes, they see things move. It's almost like the entity or the the ghost is playing jokes on them daily. Like they're like, "Hey, I put my keys down here," and they appear somewhere else. They do hear noises. They see color of bright flashes in the middle of the night for no reason. So it's definitely haunted. They don't feel in danger though. I asked them. I says, "Hey, do you guys feel threatened at all or danger? You know?" And they're like, "No." They're like so far, no. But they're pretty brave to stay there.
Very brave.
It's one of the most haunted places in the country, and as documented in the Conjuring movie.
Mm-hmm. So, do you think, like, they knew that it was the house they were buying as they were buying it, or they found out after?
No, they knew. In fact, they tell the story that they heard a rumor online, I think it was on Facebook, that the house was going up for sale, and they were like telling the story that they contacted the real estate agent at like 4:30 in the morning, and they're like, "Hey, right as soon as you open at 7 or 8 a.m., like we want to talk to you," you know. So they immediately bid and bought the house.
What was it about the house that made them want to bid for it?
Well, because of the historical connection to the Conjuring, to the haunt that happened there, 1970. But that house, believe it or not, was built in the 1730s. I want to say that house is older than America.
Wow.
That house is old. It's an old farmhouse.
I did not know that.
Yeah, it's a few hundred years old, and it was built before, you know, there was, you know, running water and all that stuff, you know, and bathrooms and piping and all that, you know. But there's all these cases and legends that go on to say, hey, that whole property, the whole land, including the river, the lake that runs through it and all that, and the farmhouse and all that, that is cursed, you know. And there's been rumors that it's been cursed by a witch that once lived there, that sacrificed her baby and cursed the whole land, and she hung herself. And that's kind of, you know, alluded to and shown in the movie The Conjuring, you know. So since then, there's been a lot of negative energies and entities hanging out. But previous owners have not stayed there. Some have stayed longer. These guys seem to be having a blast because they welcome this kind of activity. And I'm kind of like, you guys are crazy, you know?
Yeah. So you yourself wouldn't do that?
No. I so want to visit there, like for one day, just go like walk around the property, you know, and see if I see anything, hear anything, feel anything, you know. But I would not stay there, like, you know.
Yeah,
like,
I wouldn't either.
It's crazy.
Now, as far as your podcast, you guys basically do a lot of interviews that are related to movies. Is there something else that you guys interview people on? Yeah,
actually, our horror podcast, we typically say it's celebrity driven. So we have celebrity guests come in, and by celebrity, I mean they could be actors that you've seen on the screen, writers, directors, musicians, and sometimes authors that you've never even heard of. Like we had a ghost photographer author, and the crazy story with her is that she was an executive at Fox Pictures, one of the top executives. And then she came out and said, hey guys, I wrote a book called The Ghost Photographer, and I captured ghosts on photographs, and I see things, and I'm clairvoyant, and I can hear and I can tell you things about the future, and I'm clairsentient, I can feel things. And I'm just like, I mean, that's great. You know what I'm saying? It's like, imagine like your top boss at a CEO at a company coming out saying those kind of things. Everybody wanted to be like, that woman's crazy, you know?
Yeah.
But no, this is her life. Like, you know, she's since then moved on from the movie entertainment business. She's now working in, you know, as a clairvoyant now, as a ghost, you know, communicator. Full time now.
Yeah. That's a big shift career-wise.
Yeah. So we have guests like that, you know, which are really fascinating to talk to, because people always think that, oh, it's just, you know, or, you know, that person from that movie or this. Yeah, but the horror community expands to many different things, because there's stuff that involves real life, you know, like in her case, or there's stuff that's all make-believe. It's all just movies. It's like, hey, they're all actors, you know.
Yes.
So we talk to them all.
And you also had one of my role models on a recent episode.
Role model. Let me see. Who could your role model be?
One of my numerous role models.
Male or female?
Female.
Was it Megan Fox?
No. But she's hot, right?
Yeah. She's you know, she's great. She's Megan Fox, you know.
Before we get to that, why did you interview her?
Oh, okay. I'm glad you asked. This year marks the 10-year anniversary of a horror movie that she was in that a few people know about, called Jennifer's Body. And that movie was made 10 years ago, written by Oscar-winning, Academy Award-winning Diablo Cody, who she won the Oscar for Juno, and Jennifer. I'm sorry. Megan Fox plays Jennifer, a high school student who gets basically brutalized by a group of guys in a band. Like, you know, they're when I say brutalized, I mean like she's basically like raped and sacrificed and like left for dead. You know.
Wow.
And because those guys are in a cult and they believe like, oh, this girl's, you know, whatever. But little do they know that they summoned a demon, and she comes back as Megan Fox, this character Jennifer. So when this demon comes back, she's on a revenge to basically kill them, you know.
Yeah.
But it's a very dark horror comedy. There's some very funny lines in this movie, and not only that, but this movie speaks volumes to the Me Too movement, because this movie happened 10 years ago and nobody understood it. Nobody got it. Nobody got the jokes. Nobody understood. Nobody cared, and people thought, "Oh, it's just a feminist movie, whatever." Nobody understood. You know, now you fast forward 10 years to present day, and they're like, "Holy shit!" Like, this movie speaks to what's been going on in Hollywood all these recent years. You know, with, you know, all these allegations of rape and, you know, and abuse and all that. This movie kind of touches on all that stuff. You know, so it was a very ahead of its time back then, and it was telling a story of like, you know, hey, you know, bad things happen to women, like, and this is how men deal with it, you know. Yeah. So you watch that movie, it's a not only, like I said, entertaining, but at the same time, it's like, you're like, wow, it's got a message, you know. So yeah, she starred in the movie, and it's got a great cast. Adam Brody's in it too, and Amanda Seyfried's in it too, and it's one of those movies that nobody saw in theaters. It completely bombed, but it has a cult following, a huge cult following. Like, there's articles and articles and articles written about it. So it's one of those when like somebody wants a recommendation for a movie and they're like, well, what are you into? And they're like, oh, I like the high school. I'm like, cool, watch Jennifer's Body. You know, Megan Fox is great in that one.
Yeah.
But so Megan Fox was not your role model that you were thinking of.
No.
I'm trying to think, who was the guest that you're speaking of?
She's beautiful. Vintage inspired.
Oh, vintage. Okay. Okay. So yes, what are our recent guests?
I'll let you say the name, or should I?
I want you go ahead and say it.
Dita Von Teese.
Yes, Dita Von Teese.
I love her.
I love her. I mean, so she's credited with reviving the burlesque movement, the striptease movement, which was a thing back in the 40s and 50s, you know, like, you know, men would go to these peep show clubs, you know, and women would do those burlesque lingerie stripteases, you know, like it was those cabarets and stuff, not just in here, but like in Paris and possibly other countries, maybe Japan and stuff, you know. It was a very like underground thing, you know, but not, it was sexual, but not like in a pornographic way. It was more like, you know, beautiful women, you know, celebrated doing this, you know.
But at that time, when burlesque was, it was pornographic, right? At that time.
Yeah.
And the reason I say that is because I met someone who used to be a dub singer, without giving who they are. Used to be a dub singer for like Lucille Ball.
Right.
Long story short, they were doing a burlesque, no nudity show in downtown LA at the Mayan. Again, this was in the 40s and 50s.
Okay.
They added her into the show to class it up,
right? Because
they were afraid that the cops were going to come and shut it down.
Oh, wow.
But again, there's no nudity,
right.
But that's how it was seen back then.
Of course.
Yeah.
Of course. I mean, it's crazy to think, and here, I'm going to tie this into another horror movie.
Burlesque and horror.
Yeah, right. A couple nights ago, I was watching Psycho. Did you ever seen Psycho?
No, remember, I don't like these kind of movies because I'm such a wuss.
Yeah, but Psycho is one of those you can watch. And it came out, I think it was like 1960 when it was released. Alfred Hitchcock directed it. It was not his first, it was like his like 80th movie. Like he was at the end of his career, and Psycho comes out 1960. Now, the reason why Psycho I bring up, and it's related to this conversation, is because that's the first time you see a flushing toilet in a movie.
Wow.
That's the first time you see a man without a shirt on in bed in a movie. Mm-hmm. That's the first time you see he does this thing with Janet Leigh where her bra changes color. She's wearing a white bra in the beginning, and then like next before she dies in the famous shower scene, she's wearing a black bra, and like it has to do with her, doing being a good model citizen. But then she steals the $40,000, and then like now towards the end, her bra color changes to black, maybe to signify that maybe she's evil now. But it's crazy to think that in 1960, to see a bathroom flushing or to see a man without his shirt off, in bed was something you'd never seen before. 1960, how crazy is that?
Mm-hmm.
So it's like, yeah, I can see that going back to the burlesque days, and it's like they had to find a way to, like you said, class it up so that they wouldn't shut down the production.
Yeah,
that's so insane.
So, being that you have a horror culture podcast,
yes.
How does she tie in, Dita Von Teese, tie into the culture, and why did you feel that?
Okay, well, first of all, she's a very classy lady, and she was on her show and she told us a great story of where she came from. She grew up basically like near a farm, and I think it was Michigan, if I'm not mistaken. And she tells a story. She goes, we didn't have money, growing up, and her and her friends basically thrift shopped it, and bought those 40s, outfits, and that's how they used to dress in high school. They did the makeup and the hair and all that, so they really stood out in high school, from the crowds. So she must have been in high school in the early 90s, I think, or so, and or late 80s, whatever it is, or 90. Anyways, when she was in high school, her and her friends, I don't know if it was one or two friends, stood out from everybody else because she's doing this classic pinup look, not super fancy, but enough to where she's not looking like the grunge kids or the punk rock kids or the skateboarder. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah, which I was skateboarder, rock
so
kid.
Was I, yeah.
K-rocker.
Yeah.
At least that's what they used to call us.
That was us, yeah. So, but now you fast forward to present day, she's credited with resurrecting the burlesque movement, and to bringing it to mainstream. And we're talking mainstream where you see it in movies now and TV shows, and and people have all these clubs that do those kind of shows, but along with her style and her classic look and all that it kind of pairs up with the goth movement, like the goth movement and her pinup look. Some would say it's a rockabilly look, or the pinup style, the classy, the 40s look. It kind of mirrors the goth movement. The goth wearing all dark fashions, the black and all that, colors and all that, and the goth movement ties into horror like directly, like in so many ways, So in a sense, what she started is now done on the horror stage as well. So there's a lot of horror performances, burlesque performances that are carried out, where you could go to a burlesque show that's, themed by, Nightmare on Elm Street, the Freddy Krueger strip show, whatever. And you're like, it sounds silly, but then you go watching the production and you're like, wow, that's really crazy. Like, it's really cool, all these creative people, creative minds coming up with these ideas. And you go to any horror convention and you're going to see these burlesque shows, And of course,
why is that?
I think because horror and sex go hand in hand, in a sense, and sex and burlesque and striptease, striptease and burlesque is like the rated PG of sex. If you think about it these days, or the 1940s, it was like the rated X, like today it's bringing classy back to sex. You know what I'm saying? Mm-hmm. Like instead of just like, hey, here's full nudity. It's like, no. Here's a girl who's classy, who's going to take it off slowly, choreographed on stage to some badass music, badass outfits and production and fireworks and bubbles and lights and, and when you're watching the show, you're like, man, this is entertaining, and that's what she does, she brings it to the spotlight, but a lot of it has carried over into the horror world. And it's been embraced universally. So it's not just sex, for the, the Playboy Club, but it's also in mainstream, but it's also like, hey, we got the darker side of stuff, and let's not forget that she was married to Marilyn Manson for a while,
Yeah. So, who a lot of people think is a horror in itself.
Yeah, right. Right. I don't know. I mean, how if they're still friends or stuff. She doesn't speak negatively about him at all. But
Yeah.
he's, he's a guy. He does his own thing.
Right. So another thing that I noticed is that you have gone to, there's horror type, not festivals. What would you call them?
Conventions.
Like conventions.
Yes.
So I've obviously never been to one.
Oh my God, they're so much fun.
Yes. So
you got to go.
How big is it, like, of an industry, these horror conventions?
It is so huge that there's almost a convention every month throughout the United States or world. Like the big ones are here in actually the Los Angeles area. There's one in Long Beach every year. It's called Midsummer Scream. That's the biggest one. And then in Pasadena, early in the year, there's one called Monster Palooza.
I feel like I've heard of that one, Monster Palooza.
Yeah, Monster Palooza is cool because it kind of caters more towards special effects people and makeup artists and people that sculpt and make masks and special prosthetics and all that for creatures on film. And then there's a lot of those there. And that one's very celebrity driven also. A lot of celebrities go there. Probably because it's Pasadena and it's closer to Hollywood, But yeah, you definitely see a lot of celebrities there. And it's fun because the horror community is probably one of the best groups of people. I'm not just saying that because I'm a fan.
And you're part of the community.
Yeah, I'm part of the community. But horror people, horror fans, like, respect one another. You know what I'm saying? And they come out and they buy your products. Like if you had a booth there and you were selling like some pin or some hair product, whatever, people come out and they they'll support your business. So that's why almost all the booths that show up at these events, conventions, do really well, because the horror fans come out and they're like, well, maybe I don't have $2,000 to spend on something crazy, but I'm going to spend $30 on something you made. Maybe you made a candle that has my favorite horror, icon or character, like, painted on the candle or something, That's the kind of stuff they'll buy, little things. But it supports the, small business.
Yeah. Which is important. You want to support the small businesses.
Yeah, always, always,
Yeah.
no matter where you live,
Have you been to one of these conventions abroad, out of the States?
No, I have not. I have a friend. She's very popular. Her name is Leanna Vamp, and she recently went to one in South Africa.
Oh wow,
South Africa. Yeah, so she's crazy. Like her and her whole crew, which is her husband, and like all her team. They call themselves fiends, like the best fiends. They all get together, and really, she has her whole thing is she has a kid show. So she has a kid show that's horror. So it's like, but you can watch it as an adult, and you would laugh because it's funny, it's silly, like a little pumpkin, like a little bat, little ghosts, they're all characters, But yeah, she just came back from South Africa, and it's really interesting to hear her report on how South Africans view horror and or Halloween, because they don't celebrate Halloween over there,
At all.
At all.
So how do they view Halloween?
They don't really. I think from what I heard back, they don't really, like, it's not a thing, over there. But the horror is, So it's really cool to see that it's expanding to these odd countries that you would not expect to go visit. Sure, Europe, there are horror conventions in Europe, and in Spain, and there's Mexico, and the United States, and maybe in Canada, yeah, as well, But yeah, when you see one in South Africa, that's very unique, But someday, I think when I travel out, I might want to go to check out one of those,
I think you should.
Yeah.
I really think, and come back and report.
Yeah, definitely.
Now so you said it's been 2 years.
It has, yeah.
How far have you come in those 2 years with your podcast on horror?
It's been crazy. It's been crazy. Honestly, before episode 1, it was like August. It was summertime. After just a little over 2 years ago, it was summertime, August maybe. We're at a backyard barbecue at my friend's house, and the joke was, "Hey, wouldn't it be great if we can get somebody like Guillermo del Toro and go watch a horror movie with him?
That would be dope.
Talk about the horror movie with him after." And we were like, that would be insane. Like, that would be so much fun. Like, that gave us the idea of, hey, let's bring on a celebrity guest for episode 1. And we knew some people, right? And our first guest was Scout Taylor Compton. She's famous for being in Rob Zombie's Halloween movies, and she's done a bunch of other horror movies as well. And she was in The Runaways as well, movie. And we asked her, and she said, yeah. So she came on, and we had an absolute blast with her because we were just goofing off, talking about her movies and just laughing. And we're like, okay, who else can we get? So then we're like, well, who how do we work? What do we do? And then we realized, well, we can just not just talk to actors. We can talk to musicians. We can talk to people who love horror. So like episode 2, we had John 5, who was Rob Zombie's guitarist, big horror fan, and he has a unique, twist because he loves the Universal classic monsters. So it's like he loves the old school stuff.
That's very almost PG, right?
Oh, very PG. But back in the day, it was scary.
Mm-hmm.
But very PG.
Now let's touch on that Rob Zombie. He's made, he's a musician.
Yes.
But the fact that he's made movies and they've been very successful. How many has he made?
Well, let's see. He's made House of a Thousand Corpses, which is great. Devil's Rejects, which is great. And then his third movie just came out this year, a few months ago, called 3 from Hell, which is great. So he's done a few.
How is it, and that's what I was going to get at, is that the music, just like we were talking about Dita Von Teese, burlesque and horror.
Oh, yeah.
Now you have this genre of music that is intertwined with the culture of horror.
Yeah. I mean, he goes back to the White Zombie days, where he based that band on a movie called White Zombie, which was old back in the, I don't know when that came out, back in the 50s or 40s or, but he's always a horror fan. And so is his little brother, Spider-1 from Power Man 5000. They're both big horror fans. So he then left White Zombie and he became Rob Zombie, his solo career. And if you've ever seen him live, either, playing with all these cool acts like Marilyn Manson or Korn or all these bands from throughout the years, his stage production, like you'd always see a horror clip on the screens. You would see fire, you would see creatures, you would see all the cool horror stuff as the show is going on, as he's singing those songs, So it was always like a hand in hand thing, that every one of his shows is definitely horror, but fun.
Yes. I actually just saw Tool. I'm a Tool fan.
Oh, cool.
And they usually have
they're very horror.
Yes. And I'm all about it. And again, I don't watch horror movies because I can't sleep at night, but I'm total rocker chick, and I dig that, that scenery. So, a lot of rockers have geared towards the dark, towards the culture of the horror. And so you see that a lot in their music videos, right? Yep. Of course, I don't get scared watching their music videos, but it's definitely something that is connected, I believe, in the inspiration.
Yeah.
But then you have pop artists like Michael Jackson, who did Thriller.
Yes.
Yeah,
Thriller, the biggest video of all time.
Yeah. I mean, even now, it was one of, so my thing is, where was he mentally to come up with that?
Michael Jackson? Wow, I don't know the history of that, or should I say the genesis of that. I don't know which came first. I don't know if the song came out first or if the whole concept came out at the same time, making it a horror zombie, dance, mini movie basically, I know John Landis directed that, and they had Rick Baker doing the special effects, and had some other celebrity cameos who were zombies in that as well, and stuff. But yeah, it's such an amazing video. And if he were still alive, I'm sure, somebody
still alive
would be able to ask, Michael Jackson himself, like, hey, how did this whole thing come up? Where did the idea come from?
Yeah. I mean, the fact that there was footage of, I don't know if you saw this. I believe it was in the Philippines, a whole jail.
Oh,
all the inmates
I saw that.
did that video.
Performing the Thriller dance. Yeah.
And then I saw another thing online recently, actually, that it was in a senior home or senior center where they were doing a reenactment of the Thriller dance moves, but all of them were sitting in chairs for obvious reasons.
That's cool.
But I think that's amazing.
Yeah, isn't that crazy, huh?
Mm-hmm. And then we have, for example, Billie Eilish.
Oh, yes.
So I can't remember what video it is, but it's kind of horror.
Oh, with the spiders?
Yeah, and
Comes
then
out of her
her
mouth,
eyes are
yeah.
all, so
Bleeding black.
yes.
Yeah.
So if I was a celebrity, if I was a singer, I don't think that I could ever come up with that, only because of my brain is afraid of all that. But I've noticed that a lot of the people who are bright minds
Right.
love that shit.
Yeah, I mean, it's and people, people want to easily classify and say, oh, is this dark, twisted stuff? And I'm like, no,
Something's wrong with that.
Yeah, and
right?
it's like, no. I'm like, Billie Eilish, she was 16 at the time. Now she's 18 now, I think, or close to 18 or whatever.
I think she might be 17.
17.
She's still underage.
She's still underage.
And a bright woman.
Yeah, but she came up with those ideas with her brother Phineas, and the dark imagery of her music videos. It's if I'm not mistaken, her entire album is actually inspired by a horror movie called The Babadook.
I did not know that.
Yeah, so that's what I've been told. So there's definitely like references to that. I know that's her favorite horror movie, so she loves that movie. So I think that inspired her, with the album, and she decides to bring that to life on her music videos. One music video, I can't think of the name of it right now. Not the one you're thinking of with the spider, but it's a different one where you see her like walking down the hall and she's in the bed. There's a guy in the bed, and he wakes up and she's falling through the bed and stuff. So that video for that song was directed by Michael Chaves, who is now directing The Conjuring 3.
Wow.
He directed The Curse of La Llorona.
Oh, God.
Which came out earlier this year.
Do you believe that's true? La
Yes.
Llorona?
Oh, yeah.
Do you believe?
Yes.
Really?
Yes.
Oh, God.
Don't you?
No.
No?
Well, I want to believe that it's not true.
Oh, my God.
Only because, again, everyone listening, or that one or two people listening, I'm afraid. And so I like to believe that a lot of these things are fake. Because when I start to believe that they're real, that's when I can't sleep.
I was so thrilled that they made a movie about that this year, because I grew up with that. So I grew up like, you familiar with Griffith Park area, Legion Park area?
Yes.
So I grew up like close to there. So when I was a kid, 'cause I'm half Mexican, I'm half Italian. I was born here. So my parents came from two very different countries, different continents. But I'm first generation born here. So when I was a kid, I grew up with both sides of the family, right? And there were birthday parties at the park, always at the park, because it was summertime, it was hot, it was springtime, it was hot, park, right? Always at the park. And it was either Legion Park, Griffith Park. Now, Legion Park has a dark past, and so does Griffith Park, actually. Actually, Griffith Park is cursed, by the way.
I had no idea.
There's a crazy story about that.
Shut up.
Yeah.
Okay. Can we get back to that?
Yeah.
When you're done.
Yeah. But when we were kids, these party in the parks would last all day, right? You're young, right? You're just drinking, loaded up on sugar, running around, playing a game of baseball, maybe playing some volleyball, something, right? As a kid, all day long, right? Once the sun starts to set, right? The parents would say, "Hey, don't go far," and then this is when we're bored, right? So we're like, "Hey, let's go hike up that hill," and then let's go see what's over that hill. So of course we're hiking up a steep hill in the park to see what's up there, And by the way, that's where they used to dump bodies, years ago. Some of these serial killers,
wow,
like back in the 70s and 80s when they were doing bad stuff here in LA. A lot of bodies were dumped in those areas of the park. But the parents would always say, "Hey, if you're not gonna behave, you're not gonna be good. La Llorona's gonna get you." And they were like, "Fuck," that was enough to stop you. That was enough to say, "Okay." And then you come back down the mountain, you're like, okay,
La Llorona is coming if I don't get home.
My grandmother told me the story. My mother told me the story, and the legend, if you know the legend,
yes. But some of our listeners might not.
I know. So tell it. I want you to, oh, okay. So La Llorona, okay. So the legend goes back and there's rumors that the legend started in either Texas or Mexico, and if not, also in Latin American countries, Central and South America. So the legend goes that there was a beautiful woman who had two boys, and the guy that she married, who she had kids with, ended up leaving her for a younger, more beautiful woman. and basically cheated on her and left the family. And in her rage, she took her 2 boys and drowned them in the river. And she woke up from that rage, like, with a lot of, she didn't know what she did, and she was, and I think when she realized what she did, she killed herself. And in her death, it is said that her ghost roams the riverbeds, or the areas, the towns of where she's walking through, looking for her 2 sons. But the legend says that, if you as a kid aren't well behaved, she's gonna come for you.
Yeah.
So it's like, do I believe in ghosts? As a kid,
or
you're
Santa
like,
Claus,
or Santa,
good
yeah,
or bad.
Yeah, exactly right.
Or La Llorona.
La Llorona. But as a kid, when they instill that kind of stuff into your mind, you're kind of like, damn, you believe it, But so I was thrilled to see the movie. I thought the movie was well made. It was very fun to see a modern. It wasn't set in present day. It was set in the 1970s. It was fun to see that because, it's like almost.
But La Llorona's, I guess, story goes beyond the 70s, right?
Yes, I mean, rumors that it started in the 1600s, like way back then. There's even a historical tie-in that La Llorona was possibly La Malinche.
Malinche.
La Malinche.
What is that?
She was married. She was the Indian. Remember the indigenous woman?
No, I've not heard of this before.
She married. Oh my God! I hope I don't get this wrong. I think she married Hernan Cortez from the Spaniard conquistador.
Yeah.
So he came to the Americas, married the indigenous woman La Malinche.
In South America.
Which I don't recall what country that was.
Peru.
Peru, was it?
Yeah, because I think that's where he's buried.
Okay.
Now, I don't know if that's correct, but I do. Yeah. When I was out there, I did see his burial site.
I can't fact check this because I'm going off my memory. But if I'm not mistaken, he married her, and the idea is that the lore of the woman and the boys and drowning her kids was actually La Malinche. So they say that she is the original La Llorona. Don't know if that's true, but people claim that the history does go back, and
Yeah, and it might. And when you were saying that about what she went through and then kind of drowned her kids, that reminded me of postpartum depression.
Yeah, and you know what's scary? You know what's scary about that? That you mentioned that. I actually have a friend. Who came within minutes of actually drowning her babies in a bathtub.
Oh wow!
I was like, "What the fuck?" I was like, "Are you serious?" I was like, "Are you serious?" I was in so much shock that I knew somebody that actually spoke those words and said, "I had those thoughts. I wanted to do it." So if you ask me if postpartum depression is real, yeah, I saw living proof of it. And it was scary.
Wouldn't it be interesting if this indeed happened, La Llorona, or what did you call the other one?
Oh, La Malinche?
La Malinche.
Yeah.
Were true stories that have turned into like folklore, historical, horror.
Right.
Actually came from postpartum depression acts.
I mean,
just throwing it out there.
Yeah, I mean, it's possible. I think the La Llorona story, the boys were older.
Yeah.
They're not like babies, They're more like,
Way to ruin my connection, bro. No, I'm just kidding. I'm just teasing.
But no, there's a possible, it's possibility, right? Because we still don't know things about depression, right?
Yeah, yeah.
Like, look at all the suicides and all that. We still don't understand it. But now, was this possibly around 500 years ago?
Oh, possibly
right.
It was.
Right.
Yeah, it was.
And back then, nobody understood that.
No. And we're still trying to get it now.
Yeah.
Yeah. But it's funny that you say that. Have you been to Mexico City?
It's been a while.
I can't think of. I went this year in the beginning of the year. Oh my God, I'm trying to think. It's where all the boats are. I forgot what it's called. Where you're kind of on the canals in Mexico City. It's just outside of Mexico City.
Okay.
I forgot how it's very famous.
Right.
But there was a part where the tourist people not the tour guides kind of took us.
Right.
And there was all these dolls, creepy ass dolls stuck up. And there was a story, and I can't think of it right now, but I was creeped out by that alone. But it was, again, a similar story of loss and, someone kind of going crazy. And so they kind of put all the dolls up there, and they look horrifying. Everyone else wasn't scared, but I was horrified.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. And I can't remember the story, but
you got pictures of this, right?
I could probably look it up for you, but
I want to see those.
Yeah, I'll have to show you afterwards.
Yeah.
And I can't think of the story. Had I known that I was going to bring this up, I would have done my homework. But I guess because this is a podcast and anything goes, I apologize to my listeners for not having the details.
Right.
But definitely I'm very thankful that I was able to interview you on these horror things that I'm afraid of, things that I don't want to watch.
Right.
But yet I'm so intrigued by it, and to have you, someone who's, this is my first podcast episode.
Wow.
Right. So to have you come in who has this whole big podcast, right, that has to do with a subject that I'm kind of afraid to watch movies. I'm afraid to see because my personal issues.
My goal is to get you in a movie theater with me. Go watch a horror movie. Actually, we're going to put one on after the podcast.
Not going to happen. No, I'm just kidding. Have you seen that meme where it says, like, you watch a horror movie, right? And you go to bed and you're horrified.
Right.
And then you see an actual documentary on a serial killer and everything. And you go to sleep like a baby.
Yes.
That's me.
That's funny.
That's me. Right.
It's like, you'll watch Ted Bundy tapes and you'll be like, oh, that's so cute. And I'm just like, that to me, that's real horror.
Exactly. But yet my brain is exactly that meme. I'll watch the documentaries, Ted Bundy, you name it, any serial killer with details. And I'm like, okay, I'll go to sleep. Okay. Right. But I can't watch The Conjuring.
That's fine.
Because I'm afraid.
But it's, it's cool to face your fears. And I always, the thing is, people sometimes mistaken horror for like the horrific things, So if you were to come to me and say, recommend one movie for me, right? Now, I'm going to pick your brain a little bit, right? Because I want to know what you're into. Like, if you told me I want to see some crazy sick stuff, right? And I'm like, okay, I got a movie for you that almost I can't even finish watching, but I'll let you watch it if you really want to see it. But that's not my thing, My thing is like, I want to know what you're into. And if you say, I like a classic ghost story, and that's when I say, hey, you know what? Watch The Haunting of Hill House on Netflix. It's a great series. And it's not because it's going to scare you, which it will a little, but it's a good family drama movie. So there's always something behind it. There's always like substance, like somebody said, hey, recommend something. And I'm like, okay, I'm going to give you this movie. Like, let's say The Autopsy of Jane Doe. The title tells you there's an autopsy, right? So you're going to be grossed out. But in the movie, you're not grossed out because there's a twist in the movie that you do not see coming, and it becomes a whole different movie. And you're kind of like, wow, that was good. You know what I'm saying? Like, that was entertaining, like that. And that's how I expose my friends and people that ask me, like, hey, recommend something. I always give them the best stuff.
Yeah.
I'm like, check this out. You want to be scared? Here's one for you. You want a thinking a horror movie? Here's one for you.
Yeah.
You want a funny one? Here's one for you. It's escapism. It's a way to just turn off your mind and feel something different. Because yes, you do feel loved and cared for daily. But when's the last time you had a good scare?
Ooh. That
was not real. That did not put your life in danger. See?
Yeah.
And then movie's over and you're like, wow, it was kind of like riding the roller coaster. Ride's over, back to, reality.
Yeah.
So it was fun,
Well, I want to thank you so much for being my first guest on my podcast. I'm like my first.
Sure, okay. Uh-huh.
So for everyone out there, I really hope that the following episodes are a lot better as I'm getting my feet wet, right? But definitely, how can people find you if they wanted to look you up and your podcast?
Oh my God. I don't know. I'm on social media. I post random stuff. I mostly promote the podcast, to be honest with you. I'm a very or just random things in life. Like, here's my plate of food,
Yeah. So where can they find you?
Just my first name, last name. It's Leone, Leone D'Antonio, D'Antonio, at Instagram or Twitter, whatever, Stop by, say hi. My
and again, your podcast?
Yeah, it's called The Boo Crew. Little fun take on like the Scooby-Doo show, The Boo Crew. You can find us on Apple Podcasts or Spotify or anywhere you get podcasts. Check us out and say hi.
Well, thank you for coming,
Thank
and
you,
I
Mary.
appreciate
This is
this.
so much fun.
Yes.
I'm so honored to be here.
And you will be on again because I'm sure there's more things I'm going to want to talk to you about.
Anytime.
Thank you for coming.
Oh, thank you.
That was episode 1 of the Purposely Curious podcast. Make sure to subscribe on Apple Podcast and Spotify, and follow us on social media at Purposely Curious on Instagram and at Purposely C Pod on Twitter. That's Purposely, the letter C, Pod. Until next time, you know what to do.